It's the late afternoon of December 23rd, 2012, in Houston, Texas. Herman Meglar is getting ready to leave his house and visit his brother and sister-in-law for dinner. His wife Maria and his two daughters, Monica and Marissa, pile into their family car, and he drives off towards his brother's house. They are heading over there to celebrate his brother's 32nd wedding anniversary. His brother Jamie had married his high school sweetheart Sandy, and they were celebrating their anniversary a couple weeks after the official date because Sandy hadn't been feeling well. This wasn't anything new, because Sandy suffered from several chronic illnesses and was often too weak to do much. But finally, she was feeling well and had invited her in-laws to celebrate with her and Jamie. Herman pulls up to his brother's house, and he and his family knock on the door, waiting for their warm welcome. But no one answers. They knock again, and still, nothing. This is when Herman notices that Jamie has left one of the garage doors open, which is something he never does. After waiting a little bit, Herman decides to let himself in through the front door with his own set of keys. Once the family enters the house, they hear something strange. They hear what they describe as muffled screams coming from another room. Herman and his family follow the screams through the master bedroom into the master bathroom, where they find the filled bathtub's jacuzzi jets running, several burnt-out candles surrounding the tub, and a plate of strawberries and whipped cream nearby. In the bathroom, there is a connecting closet door with a chair shoved against it. Herman can hear the screams coming from inside this closet. He removes the chair and opens the door to find his sister-in-law, Sandy, bound by her wrists and ankles on the floor of the closet. Sandy can't move much with her thick binds, and it is clear that she's been in this closet several hours as she has soiled herself. Herman runs to Sandy and attempts to untie her, but the cloth that has been used to bind her is so secure and tight that he has to go get a pair of scissors to cut them off. Sandy is distraught and has no idea what happened or where her husband Jamie is. Once the family gets Sandy out of the closet and on her feet, they move back into the master bedroom looking for Jamie, and when they can't find him there, they look into the master walk-in closet. And to their horror, they find a gruesome scene. This is the murder of Jamie Meglar. Hi, strangers. I'm your host, Alexa Morrissey, and today's case is exceptionally bizarre. Not only because of how strange the crime was, but because how the case was handled. It's a case that, according to the state of Texas, is solved and justice has been served. But when you hear the details laid out by the police and the prosecution, I highly doubt that you won't have more questions than when you started this story. Lock your doors and listen closely. This is Stranger in the House. In 1963, Jamie Meglar was 3 years old when he and his family immigrated to Houston, Texas from Guatemala. By all accounts, he had a normal childhood and eventually went on to attend Lamar High School in Houston. At the start of his senior year, he noticed a new girl in his class, a cute blonde named Sandy McCulloch, who had just transferred to his school and decided to sit in the desk in front of him. Jamie didn't know this at the time, but this new girl sitting in front of him would change his life forever. Jamie and Sandy hit it off right away and started dating soon after meeting. The high school sweethearts got married 2 years after they graduated and converted to Jehovah's Witnesses soon after. For those of you who don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses are a type of Christian that adhere to strict rules of behavior based on their interpretation of the Bible and believe that the destruction of the present world system at Armageddon is imminent, and that the establishment of God's kingdom over the earth is the only solution for all the problems faced by humanity. They don't celebrate birthdays, most modern holidays like Christmas, and have a strict rule against getting blood transfusions. And as a side note, this is because Jehovah's Witnesses believe that a human must not sustain his life with another creature's blood. and they recognize no distinction between, quote, taking blood from the mouth and taking it into the blood vessels. Like most Christian religions, divorce is looked down upon, but it is possible under certain circumstances, like extreme infidelity or abuse. Divorce was not something that Jamie and Sandy ever worried about, however, because according to friends and family, they were a loving, devoted couple. Jamie's devotion could plainly be seen when he had to become Sandy's main caretaker. Sandy had developed epilepsy when she was a teen, and her seizures were so severe that she actually suffered short-term memory loss. The worst, most violent seizure a person can have is called a grand mal seizure, and if they last long enough, they can cause severe damage to the brain. Sandy, unfortunately, was prone to these types of seizures. And as another quick side note, I actually had epilepsy when I was a child, and I was prone to grand mal seizures. As I got older, that stopped, and I only have minor seizures now on very rare occasions. But I bring this up because this personal experience of epilepsy actually has given me some unique insight into this case. But more on that later. In addition to severe seizures, a couple years after Sandy had her daughter Elizabeth, she also developed lupus, which is an autoimmune disease that can cause a number of symptoms, including extreme fatigue and issues with your central nervous system. At one point, Sandy became temporarily paralyzed on one side of her body because of her lupus, and was in a wheelchair for months. Sandy also had hypothyroidism and had to get 2 hip replacements before she was in her 50s. Because of her ailments, Sandy was not allowed to drive or work. But this wasn't an issue, though, because Jamie was happy to take care of her. According to a family friend named Stephanie Davies, quote, Jamie was very involved with all aspects, researching her conditions, trying to find any possible treatments, cures, whatever he could do. She said, quote, there were times when she didn't feel safe driving and was afraid that her seizures might come on, so she depended on him for a lot of day-to-day activities, end quote. Jamie worked in IT and was the sole breadwinner of the family, and was Sandy's caretaker on top of that. But he never seemed to complain. In December of 2012, the couple was set to celebrate 32 years of marriage. Their official anniversary was on the 12th of December, but Sandy had not been feeling well, so she and James decided to wait until December 22nd to celebrate. According to an interview conducted by the Houston police, Sandy describes the following of how the night of the 22nd played out. That evening, she and Jamie went to their favorite Mexican restaurant around 8 p.m. She says that she wasn't keeping track of time, but she assumed it was around 8 when they arrived. She knows that they stayed at the restaurant for a while, and after they finished their meal, they stopped at a local CVS, which is a convenience store for all our international listeners. They went there to grab mixers for drinks that they were going to have back at home. They bought a bottle of vodka, Sprite, Coke, and a bag of ice. Once they left CVS and continued home, Sandy noticed a car behind them that had been on the same route as them for a concerningly long time. At first, she thought they were being followed. But as they arrived at their home, the car turned off a different block, so she dismissed it. Once they got back to their house, around midnight, they made some drinks, grabbed some strawberries and whipped cream, went upstairs to their bathroom, and got into their jacuzzi tub. Sandy says they were in the tub for about 2 hours, in which they had sex, and then they just talked for a while. She says they talked about their adult daughter Elizabeth, and the fact that Jamie was planning on retiring next year. Sandy says that they were planning on getting out of the tub and moving into the bedroom when they heard their 4 dogs barking in the backyard. Jamie wrapped a towel around his waist and went downstairs to let the dogs in because he didn't want to bother the neighbors with their barking. Sandy sat in the tub waiting for Jamie for a while until she decided to get out and dry off. She says she went into the bathroom closet to put on some lotion and then nothing. Sandy doesn't know what happened, but suddenly she wakes up on the floor of her closet. She told police that when she woke up, her head was throbbing and she ended up passing out again. She wasn't sure what happened, but she thought she either had a seizure or was hit in the head and knocked out from behind. So, like I mentioned earlier, I have had grand mal seizures in the past, and when they happen to you, you completely lose consciousness. You have no idea what happened until you wake up out of a deep, dead sleep. Seizures exhaust you physically and cause your head to hurt afterwards. But for Sandy to mention that she thinks she had been hit in the head, I think the pain must have been worse than usual. When Sandy woke up the second time, her wrists and legs were cramping up. She rolled over on the closet floor and realized that she had been bound by her wrists and ankles. Realizing that she was tied up and unable to move, she started to scream for help. It wasn't until 4 p.m. in the evening that she was discovered by Jamie's brother. As mentioned earlier, when her in-laws and her nieces arrive at the house, they had a hard time getting Sandy out of the bathroom closet. A chair against the door had barricaded her in, and her binds were so secure that they actually had to go get a pair of scissors to cut her loose. She had also soiled herself multiple times while being stuck in the closet for all those hours. She and her in-laws found Jamie nude and dead on the floor of their bedroom's master closet. His ankles were tied with a telephone cord, and a rope was loosely knotted around his chest. He had stab wounds and bruises all over his body, and his face looked badly beaten. The family called 911 and waited for the authorities to arrive. According to the report by the EMTs who arrived on the scene, Sandy was, quote, inconsolable and crying hysterically. She also had bruising alongside her arms, but no cuts or blood were found on her. When police soon arrived after, however, they did not see a grieving injured wife, but a prime suspect. When police arrive at the scene, they find lots of blood, but it's all confined to the master bedroom, with most of it being in the bedroom closet, where Jamie was found. As mentioned before, Jamie was found nude and on the floor of the bedroom closet. He was also badly beaten, had serious stab wounds, and obvious defensive wounds, suggesting he fought his attacker. A loaded gun was found in the bedroom closet, but it was hidden from view, and Jamie had no visible signs of being shot. The closet was also where Jamie and Sandy kept their safe, and the police found that the safe was still locked and secure. Drawers had been pulled open, jewelry boxes had been rifled through, and a wallet and a purse had been overturned on the bed. Despite this, police noticed that nothing seemed to be missing except 2 pill bottles that were supposed to be in the bedroom. 1 bottle of phenobarbital, which was Sandy's epilepsy medication, and 1 of hydrocodone, a cough suppressant. There was also some blood on a chair and a plastic bench next to the bed. In the bathroom, police found a woman's white blouse and a kitchen knife in the jacuzzi tub. When police first questioned Sandy at the crime scene, they found it a little too convenient that she had no memory of anything that happened between the time that she passed out and the time that she came to in the closet. But remember, they probably don't know about her seizures or short-term memory loss yet, left alive. The police were suspicious of Sandy right away, and one of Herman's daughters, Marissa, said that she got the feeling that the detectives were already looking at her aunt the night the crime was discovered. According to True Crime Recaps, whose video you can find on YouTube, 2 hours after the police responded to the 911 call, while CSI was still working at the crime scene, detectives were on the phone with the district attorney's office, seeing if they could charge Sandy with murder. Nothing had been analyzed yet. All the evidence is still at the house, but police were already sure they had their suspect. Unfortunately for them, the DA told them that they could not charge Sandy just yet. And to be fair, in 90% of cases in which a spouse is murdered, the perpetrator is the husband or wife. But considering how Sandy was found, they needed more evidence to support their theory. Later that day, still December 23rd, Sandy is taken to the police station for official questioning. She's interviewed by homicide officer Sean Carazal and Sergeant Doucet of the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Much of this questioning is available to the public, and we will insert clips of it here, but we will also link the full transcript of the interview in the show notes. Sandy gives the police her version of the previous night's events: the Mexican restaurant, CVS, jacuzzi, dogs barking, and Jamie going to bring them inside. She tells officers that when they arrived home, they entered through the garage as they rarely used the front door, which remained locked. She entered the house before Jamie and didn't see if he had closed the garage door like he normally did, but from experience, she felt that he did close it. She told police that when she woke up in the closet, she thought she had had a seizure because her body and her head were hurting. The pain was so bad that she ended up passing out right after she woke up the first time. Another quick thing about seizures. There is no medical way to prove someone has had a seizure. Usually, someone else has to witness it, or a doctor will see it on an EEG, which records electrical activity of the brain. Trauma or injury to the head could definitely induce a seizure. So it's possible that if she was hit from behind, it could have caused her to lapse into a seizure if it didn't just happen to her naturally. When Sandy woke up the second time, she realized that she was tied up. She said she tried to flip her body, noting that her left side had fallen asleep, and she got stuck where she was until she was found. She said she didn't remember whether or not she was tied up when she woke up the first time. But again, you're very disoriented when you come out of a seizure. Police asked her if she was in any pain during that time, and she told them that her legs were cramping, her wrists hurt, and her head hurt. They asked her what her head hurt like, and she said she thought she may have been hit in the head or fell or was pushed. The questioning starts to turn when police asked Sandy if she heard anything after Jamie left the bathroom. She said she couldn't hear anything outside the bathroom because the jacuzzi jets were still running and they muffled any sound coming from outside the bathroom. The police then remind Sandy that she said she heard the dogs barking from outside in the backyard. To which Sandy responds, it was because the window of the bathroom near the jacuzzi was facing the backyard where the dogs were. The investigators then suggest that this might have been a crime of passion. That's when Sandy realizes that they're implicating her. And she says, I think I'm going to need a lawyer. Now, here's the thing. Sandy says this, and the police read her Miranda rights. But the police continue to question her, and she continues to answer. So her Miranda rights are not technically violated. Miranda rights, or the Fifth Amendment, is a constitutional right to remain silent when taken into custody to be questioned. So she had the right to remain silent, but she didn't, and continued to answer their questions. Investigators then asked Sandy if anything had been left in the jacuzzi, and she said no. They asked if any clothing was left in the tub, and she still said no. When they tell her that they found a white blouse and a butcher's knife in the jacuzzi, Sandy insists it wasn't hers. The Meglars did have another knife in their kitchen from the same brand as the knife in the tub, but Sandy still insisted that it wasn't theirs. The police asked if she and Jamie ever fought, and she said no. She said the only thing they ever fought over was how strict they were going to be with their daughter Elizabeth when she was younger. Police noted that Sandy's arms were covered in bruises, and she said that that often happened when she collapsed from seizures. Hours into the questioning, around 1 a.m., the two officers decide to apply more pressure to Sandy, and once again, they question her on how she was unable to hear anything from the bathroom closet. They start to describe to her how he probably died only a few feet away from her, screaming and calling for her help. The police end their questioning by asking her if she had anything to do with her husband's death. And she answers through tears, no. After questioning, they ask Sandy if she would be willing to do a polygraph test. And she says yes, but not right now because she is a nervous wreck and she wants to discuss it with her lawyer first. You can clearly see Sandy walk out of the room with the aid of a cane. Jamie Meglar's autopsy comes back, and according to an article by Good Morning America, he had more than 50 stabbing, cutting, and blunt force injuries. In addition to this, he also had a fractured skull. According to Celestina Rossi, a blood pattern and crime reconstruction expert, Jamie had a lot of defensive wounds on both hands, which means that he was either trying to disarm the attacker or block the assault. Rossi said that in her opinion, Jamie Meglar and his assailant were locked in hand-to-hand combat in the bedroom closet, and that's where he was killed. Now, when the attack occurred, Jamie and Sandy's daughter, Elizabeth, who at the time was 25 years old, was in London, England, halfway across the world from her parents. Once she heard about her parents' attack, she immediately flew back to Houston. But she noticed a couple things that stood out as strange to her. Remember, in the closet where Jamie was found, there was a safe. The safe was still locked, but Liz noticed that there was blood on the handle. She contacted police about the blood, and they came back and took a sample to be tested, something they had not done on their initial investigation. Elizabeth was told by the police that while her parents' drawers and wallets were rifled through, it appeared that nothing of value had been taken from the house. But as Liz walked through the home, she found that police were mistaken and that there were in fact many things missing. A 32-inch flat-screen TV was missing from atop a dresser, and this was corroborated by loose cables on the floor right by the dresser. Liz even found the receipt for the TV in the house. Liz also found an old backpack of hers in the garage containing some video games, an Xbox, and jewelry that was taken from the house. And again, this was not initially noted by the police or taken as evidence. Liz also noticed that her father's toolboxes had been rifled through, and 2 of his tool bags in the garage were nearly empty. Liz reported everything she found to the police, and they promised to have everything analyzed. After that, Liz and Sandy just waited. They received no news and got no updates from police for almost a year and a half. That is, until the summer of 2014, when Liz and Sandy finally get some news regarding Jamie's murder. Sandy was being indicted for her husband's murder, and there was a warrant out for her arrest. And that is where we're going to leave part 1. In part 2, we are going to go into the trial and how the prosecution explains how Sandra could tie herself up in a closet and barricade herself in from the other side. And because I'm sure you're dying to know, part 2 will be available tomorrow morning. Stay safe, strangers, and I'll see you tomorrow. Today's episode was written by Alexa Morrissey, researched by Victoria Cox, and produced by Boy Wonder Productions. All our sources will be linked in the show notes.